All right, here we are, ready to do another. How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. You?
How's the puppy?
Amazing and Tara. She's a good little cockapoo.
All right.
The kids are loving it, and she's catching on real fast, and she's starting to give me some sleep after a few nights, and hopefully continues.
Well, there you go. Welcome to the DSC podcast, the Dog Sleeps Continuously podcast, right? With your hosts. No, Chad's got a new puppy, guys. You got any puppy raising tips? Drop them in the comment box. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the upcoming draft. We got some cool stuff ahead, but this is a guest we've had lined up for quite some time. I'll give you the credentials momentarily when he pops on, but this guy has been in the scouting business. He's been general manager in the Ontario Hockey League for as long as I've been alive. So he's got all the connections. I'm not going to tell you all about it right now. Let's get that intro running. But big shout out to our sponsor, phgsports.com. It's right there. PHG Sports. Give those guys a look up, guys. They're back in the Costco warehouses now, doing their thing, selling their products. And they got a bunch of great merch out now. That's where the pros sign. And and if you want legit hand signed merchandise by your favorite players, football, soccer, basketball, hockey, you name it.
Even
wrestling, yeah, UFC too, man. There was UFC. a set of George St. Pierre gloves. Yeah. He's still my beating heart. But yeah, check out phgsports.com. And of course, you can follow those guys on Facebook for up to date where we're going to be next type posts. So
I know, Ryan. I think those gloves would look nice on either side of that Spalding basketball there.
Yeah, check out what's below the Spalding basketball. From PHG Sports is a stick blade signed by William Nylander. Bought it from PHG.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
one of 10 in the world, guys. That's an exclusive from PHG. So the good guys at PHG arranged a private Nylander signing, and they got some pretty neat stuff. In any case, without further ado, we got a great one ahead. We got the episode 25, Deke Snipe Silly podcast with Jeff Twohey. Tater tatter, let's get at her. It was time to introduce our guest. Welcome to episode 25 of the Deke Snipe Silly podcast.
25.
Yeah, I hope so. I never checked, but yeah, 25.
It is, Willis. That's what you're putting on it.
Whew. Episode 25 of the Deke Snipe Silly podcast with your host, Chad Newman, and myself, Ryan Gates. We're pleased today to welcome a veteran of hockey in general. I consider one of the great minds that came up through the junior hockey ranks, certainly. 30-year veteran with the Peterborough Petes in all positions. I'm taking it from towel boy right up to general manager, from what I can gather. Couple of years with the Oshawa Generals. Spent 7 years as a professional scout, director of amateur scouting, I guess, with the Arizona Coyotes or Phoenix Coyotes, depending on your affiliation with the team. And I understand you did a little bit of work with the Frontenacs as well. That's as a senior advisor. So we'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Jeff Twohey.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. When you do that introduction there, Ryan, it makes me sound a little old, right? So, I'll just say I started in hockey when I was 5. How's that?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Just to put it in perspective, guys, Jeff's first year as a scout in Peterborough was the same year I was born. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Jeff says.
All right, move on. What part of Newfoundland are you guys in?
Well,
I'm in St. John's.
Yeah, Chad's in the city. I'm just outside the city. I'm about an hour's drive outside of St. John's.
Okay.
So
that's still one of my favorite places.
Have you been? Yeah. You been much, or?
Oh yeah. Back, especially in the OHL, when you used to be able to draft out there. I used to be one of the few people that went out there and braved the cold, and so I've been out there many times.
Yeah, no, back in the day when the OHL used to scout here, we had quite a number of players who were going away playing in the O. I mean, Danny Cleary was probably our biggest export at the time, who played in the Ontario Hockey League. He lived up there.
I had Corey Crocker, who's from
right,
and Daniel Ryder, had him. So yeah, I was out there. I mean, I've been places like the Goulds, all those places out there.
Gold rolls. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I probably one of the funnest nights I ever had was on George Street with Mark Hunter one night there. So it was great. It's a great place. I actually want to go out there sometime in the summer because I've only been there when the weather's crappy. So
we got
that
2
could be
days
summer
in the
too.
summer. We got 2 days in the summer where you can have a great time here. Then
that's why my wife's not jumping to go.
Yeah.
Now we've had a string of great weather in the last couple of years. We've had beautiful summers. Tourist season was always a hit. So no, it's a great chance to see the whales and the icebergs and all that good stuff.
It's had windy.
Yeah, it's a great place. So just I really, the times I was out there, it was really good. So I miss going out. So I'll be out again sometime. I just got to convince my wife.
Well, when
come on now.
To look us up. We'll take care of you for sure.
For sure.
Show you the real George Street.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
No, that's about 15 years ago for me, at least.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. People are friendly and
yeah, that's a good time.
I mean, and it's funny, I don't want to ramble on too much, but like you guys tend to take it for granted, like the ocean, and just to be able to see it, and actually where Daniel Ryder's from, that's a place where they go to watch the icebergs, you iceberg watching it. So
yeah, my mother's from not too far from there, so I'm aware of that area. It's beautiful. Yeah.
No way. We're surrounded by some beautiful scenery, and one thing that COVID-19 has taught all of us locally is just how lucky we are to live in such a space where we've got so much room, so much beauty around us. Like COVID, while it hasn't been fun for anybody in the world, it hasn't affected Newfoundland anywhere near like it has the rest of the country and the world. We've had like 200 cases total or something stupid. It's not that low, but it's something stupid like that. Like
we have like 5 active right now.
Yeah. That's pretty.
So
that's pretty good.
And I think 4 of those guys are on a boat in CBS right now. So it's,
they're Portuguese fishermen. They're stuck on a boat.
So. Guys, I'll never forget to this last one. I'll ramble on about, but being there one time in really bad weather and seeing those fishing boats come in when they're coated in ice and they're tilted kind of coming in, because of the ice. It's like, man, that's some hardy people that do that stuff.
You got that right. It's nasty out there.
That's my history. By trade, I'm a master mariner, so I'm a ship's captain.
Oh, really?
By trade. Yep. So while I'm not busy hockey podcasting, I'm used to be driving boats.
Holding down an RE career.
I guarantee I'd be downstairs puking the whole time. Guarantee it. I couldn't do it.
Remind me sometime to send you some of the pictures that we got from offshore Newfoundland. And you remember the what was the movie George Clooney did? Perfect Storm.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people said, "Oh, how dramatized these waves are," and I'm like, "No, are you sure?" Yeah. Because I got some photos that would blow your mind.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
So
I worked on oil rigs for a bit, and there was a deep water drilling rig, an extreme water one, and they all had T-shirts made on this one hitch, and it said, "I survived 3 perfect storms," and then within 21 days.
Yeah.
So there's actually 3 literally happened while they were doing it. They never stopped drilling twice, I don't think.
Yeah. Wow. Well, they call them 100-year storms, and we get one a year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
Daniel Ryder used to. The thing I loved about Daniel Ryder was like where he played on that tri-pen team. Like they had to travel. Like it was like a 3-hour trip just to practice. And then he'd tell me stories about how they'd go over to Halifax or wherever, but coming back on the boat, they couldn't get into the harbor because it was too rough. So they just stay anchored out there and seasick for 12 hours.
Bob around. Yep.
Yeah. Like that's a hardy crew.
Yeah. It's not for the faint.
No.
So speaking of Daniel, because he's arguably, I'm not going to say the most talented player we've ever put off the island, but he's right up there. The only thing kept him out of the big show, of course, was he ran into his own difficulties and mental health challenges along the way. And that's not a thing to be ashamed of anymore, like it was back then. It was kind of a taboo thing back in the day. But Daniel, as a player and a person, aside from all the drama, what stuck out to you the most about Daniel?
Well, you know what? It's a funny story, Ryan. I went out there to see him because I had heard about him, and not many people went out there. And I went out and like literally froze my ass off out there. And I saw him the first night, and Corey Crocker, who played for me, was coaching him. And he was just okay, you know. And after the game, Corey said to me, he's like, he's going to be a lot better tomorrow. He said, we haven't even been together for 3 weeks, you know. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I heard that before. I saw him the next day, and I was like, wow. And I found his dad in the, and I've only done this one other time, well, 2 other times, I guess, but I found his dad and I said, listen, if you choose Ontario, I'll take Daniel in the first round. Like, I guarantee, I'll give you my word. You can talk to Corey to trust me. But Daniel was so smart and so talented and competitive, like not a fighter, obviously, but no fear, you know, just loved to play. So it's a tragedy, you know, what's happened, unfortunately for him. But in all my years, he's right up there with one of the most talented players that, and it was a blend of talent and hockey sense. He was so smart. So he was an NHL player all day long. Like, you know, if he hadn't run into the issues that he's, you know, had and currently has, I guess, but 100% he was an NHL player.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was always compared to his brother. And Michael Ryder he had a fantastic career as an NHL player, lifted the Stanley Cup and as an impactful player. And I'm not talking about Ryder on the fourth line here. I mean, Ryder scored goals, right? He tore it up everywhere he played. And they always said, anybody who watched the boys growing up, they said Michael was good, but Daniel had the hockey sense. He was a better skater. I mean, Michael had a really great shot. You couldn't take his shot away. He was one of the best shots in the NHL when he was on. But all other aspects of the game, everyone tipped their hat towards Daniel, you know?
Well, and Daniel, like when we won the OHL championship in 2006, Daniel was a playoff MVP. And I remember that night, you know, afterwards, Daniel's dad was here, Michael was here, like just the family support, you know, was really good. So it's still something to this day that, you know, it's sad because he was such a good player, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, even I remember Don Cherry was even singing his praises on Coach's Corner long before he had any business being talked about in NHL circles. Don was saying, "This kid is watch out, you know, this kid is going to be great, right?"
Yeah, and you know, like for the amount of like competition he had, which wasn't great, like in Newfoundland, obviously there's only so many teams and you got to travel, but his like sense and ability to make plays and. We had a really good team. In fact, that team that won in 2006 had the best record in the history of the Peterborough Petes. And the playoff record is incredible that we had. And we knocked London off in 4 straight. But Daniel was crazy. He was the playoff MVP. He was the guy that we could rely on everywhere, defensively, offensively, just a complete player. So
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would have been the same team that Jordan Stahl was on, correct?
Yeah, correct. That was his second year. Yeah.
So that's high praise in itself to be placed alongside a player like Jordan and get the kind of praise that he got from those games.
And then being a part of that success for all of them.
Yeah. Anyways, you know, I miss Daniel. I get updates sometimes. I run into his billets here that have stayed in touch, and you know, I know it's still a work in progress for him. So hopefully at some point, you know, he starts to feel better and can overcome this, but it's sad.
It is, but that's one thing about it, and we're quite proud as Newfoundlanders. He's got support. He's got a ton of support, as much as he needs, and it's just a matter of what he does with that and what help he can give himself as well. So I think he'll come out on the other side and be better for it. But again, like I said, it's got to be equally hard for him knowing where he could have went. You know, and having that playing in the back of his mind too, because I mean that's every kid's dream is to play in the NHL, and he could have been not just playing. I mean, it's one thing to be
playing.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. He could be still playing. He was that good. So no, but that's
funny too. Last thing, I hear you guys get me going on stories, but when I was in trying to think, what was the name of the town he's from?
Bonavista.
Bonavista, yeah. So I was in Bonavista, and I'll never forget. A guy came up to me, and we found out I was with Peterborough, and he was telling me that every Saturday night that the Petes played, they would have Hockey Night in Canada on TV. People would get together at the Riders, and they would have Hockey Night in Canada on TV watching Montreal play, volume down, and then they would have our broadcast for the Petes, so they could watch Michael and listen to Daniel's game. Like,
no way.
You know, I thought, man, I'm in Newfoundland and somewhat remote Newfoundland, And these people like this is hockey. You know,
Exactly,
it just seemed to
yeah.
me it was so perfect. So anyways, nothing but good memories anytime I was ever out there.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. And that's the resounding trend that we're getting from our podcast as well. We've had a lot of great guests on, and everyone's either been here or knows somebody from here or had the best drinking experience of their life with someone from Newfoundland. You know, there's always a story.
Yeah.
The best neighbor they have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
I
guy
listen to
hopped
Terry
outside the room.
Ryan too all the time, so I hear his podcasts. So.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's right.
Holy cow. Yeah, no, there's some
He's
stories.
got some stories there, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a bit of a wild child.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, well, what we got you here for? I guess I'm gonna. Geez, we're rambling on here. I got to introduce our guest. So,
Yeah. Who do we have?
we both grew up Leafs fans, me and Chad. So a lot of times
Boys, we can end this now. I'm a
I know, right?
Yeah,
I heard that.
I heard, and trust me, Jeff, I don't feel one bit bad. I don't feel bad for you at all.
You know what? It's strange too, because where I grew up in central Ontario, I mean, we're only an hour and a half from Toronto, but it was always the Canadians for me, like just the history, you know, and they were always winning and, you know, beating Boston, and it was a Canadian teams. Hey,
yeah.
You guys
Ken
might see a
Dryden days
trophy in your lifetime. I don't know.
It's like we always seem to manage to find some Ken Dryden fans on this podcast as well.
Yeah.
It seems to be, they hooked everybody back in the day, and I don't blame you.
Yeah.
But I do,
the history.
you know.
I love just the history of the Canadians. I mean, the Leafs is good too. I'm not a Leaf hater, but I'm certainly a Canadians lover.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about the Habs too. I don't dislike the Habs. I just dislike their fans.
Yeah.
No, it's really funny that Chad mentioned Ken Dryden. We had Alan Bester on for an episode there a while back, and Alan was fantastic. We had a great chat, a good time. But I was like, all right, Bester, enough talking about how great Ken Dryden was. All right, let's talk about how good you were.
You're a Leaf, remember?
He's like, yeah,
yeah.
But it's really funny because you're right. There's a certain demographic and a certain age point, I think, there among men in particular, hockey fans who just, it's almost like if you grew up in the 90s watching basketball, you watched Michael Jordan. It's the exact same connection to hockey, because there was just nobody was beating the Habs. Was just, it's a little before my time, but I've looked back far enough to say, oh yeah, they were an unbeatable team.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in fairness, the Peterborough Petes, they were originally brought here by the Montreal Canadiens. The Petes were their farm team for junior before there was the draft. So they sent most of the French kids to the Montreal Junior Canadiens, and the English kids they owned came to Peterborough here. So
that I didn't know. See, I'm learning something.
No, that I didn't know.
And Bob Gainey lives here in Peterborough, grew up here, played for the Petes. So, you know, there's just a few more tidbits for you guys.
That's right. Yeah.
Connections are coming full circle for me here. It's creeping me out.
Yeah.
No, Jeff, what are you up to these days? I mean, with COVID and everything else, I mean, junior hockey was almost non-existent this last year. And so what are you doing currently?
Well, this past year, Ryan, obviously with COVID, there wasn't any hockey. The previous year I spent with the Kingston Frontenacs as a kind of a senior advisor there. The general manager is a young guy, Darren Kiley at the time, who I've known since he was a little kid. We were both connected to Roger Nielsen, and so really enjoyed it. It was a great year in, you know, helping out the Frontenacs in all areas, scouting, you know, just feedback on everything. And, you know, played a very active role in helping to get Paul McFarland from the Toronto Maple Leafs back to Kingston as a head coach. And, you know, just out of the blue last summer, they decided to let Darren Kiley go. And once that happened, I kind of walked away, and there was no hockey anyways in Ontario. So this past year, I spent a lot of time watching NHL games, reading. I've actually got 2 grandsons here in town. So I've got a 2.5-year-old. So they kept me busy. But no, it was a good year to kind of reflect and read and get better. And, you know, I'm optimistic I'm going to be back in the fall watching games again, and looking forward to it. But you know, to have a year where you had the whole year, it was different for me, and different for my wife as well. You know, be home every night was a little different, but it was good. So I feel good. I feel refreshed, and you know, not to ramble on, but the great thing about COVID and it taking hockey away from us, I think it's given us a new appreciation. So, you know, I can't wait to get the OHL going again, and watching games and the NHL all levels. I mean, you know, it's just you kind of forget how much you love it. So it certainly gave me a renewed sense of optimism and excitement. And once everything goes in the fall, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right. I think
so
we're talking about the Frontenac stuff, Chad. If you don't mind, I'll try. I got to throw one
in.
No,
go right ahead.
Frontenac thing just spun my mind. If we're gonna throw out a shout out to the Frontenacs, we got to mention Shane Wright right off the bat. I mean, you've had an opportunity to watch him play undoubtedly at his best. He put the world on notice just recently in that
in the U18
under 18s, and I mean, just how good is this kid, Jeff? Is he worth the hype?
Yeah, he really is, guys. He, when the Frontenacs went through a tough season, obviously they got the first pick, and that was the prize, and those guys don't come around too often. I mean, usually, you're kind of looking between 2 or 3 guys, but when the number 1 pick is really clear cut, as it was with Shane, and he's a year younger than everybody else, it's pretty exciting. And Shane, I was around the team a lot, so I saw them, off the ice practice, how Shane in particular carried himself, but really good player. Obviously, he's got outstanding offensive sense. I mean, the defensive part, he's got to learn a little bit, but when he gets the puck, his ability to score goals. I mean, he got 39 goals as a 15-year-old and would have got 40 had the season not ended. And let's be honest, he was playing on an average team that was young. It was going to get better, but it was very young. So there's no question about his ability, but just the leadership potential and maturity on him is something I've never seen. And he got an A on his sweater after Christmas, and that was earned. And credit to him, not one older player complained about it because they could see it. His focus, how he treated his teammates, how he conducted himself in school. He's a very special player. And, when you get a combination of high-end ability, hockey sense, and leadership, it's a shame that the Kingston fans lost a year of watching him because
right.
They deserve a Shane Wright. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
They've had a rough go.
Yeah. So very much worth the hype.
Yeah, I assumed as much, but I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. No, he's going to be something else. That under 18 tournament, he was like, all the talk was more about Bedard, and I get it. No, he played great, but he played 2 less games and had the same amount of points.
Yeah, and you know what it is too, guys. Like the key to winning, any team winning, is you've got to have a very clear leader. And when you can have a leader like Shane is, it's also far and away your best player. You've got a chance to win. Now it's up to the Frontenacs to build around him accordingly, but that's a very hard thing to find, and only championship teams have it. And Shane gives them that potential. So hopefully it works out for them.
Yeah. No, he's the one player now that I'm obviously falling into the mass media perception of the kid, but I've drank the Kool-Aid. I'm a fan already, and I'm really excited to see where this. I'm ready to skip this year's draft, not because of no knock to any of the kids who are there, but I'm really excited about Shane. I really am. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar. So, no, I've drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, well, you know what, too, Ryan? Like, if you met him, you would like he would make you feel good. You know what I mean? Like, he's not one of the young kids and he have every reason to have a big head and some arrogance, but that's not him. So his parents have done a great job there.
Yeah,
so we've got to hear.
We got a kid locally just drafted by Jersey, Dawson Mercer. Played well for Team Canada. He grew up 5 minutes from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
Small town, big time hockey town. Big time hockey's religion here, and
part of the Tri-Pen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, part of Tri-Pen. Yeah.
Tri-Pen player. But again, I mean, they always say, oh yeah, the comparables are this and that. He's a Patrice Bergeron style player, that kind of 200-foot player. But everyone always goes back to the quality of person.
Yeah.
The kind of guy he is. I mean, he got that Newfoundland charm about him. He's a very easygoing cat, but also a great leader. Really cares about everybody on his team. That all those intangibles that a lot of people think don't really matter, but I think at the end of the day, it's what makes superstars.
Well, and
Yep.
as we talked about at the start, like playing AAA hockey in Newfoundland is not easy, with the
No, God,
Chychrun,
no.
especially the amount of
Yep.
travel. So I'm sure, he learned some humility there too. And that's one of the great things. And I'm going to say this with a lot of respect, like hockey in Newfoundland is old school because kids play it because they like it. Guys coach it because they love coaching.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of the distractions that there are here in Ontario in the big cities. So, when a player like that comes out of there, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. That's right. And it's just it is a great place. You do have a lot less of the lot less people trying to chime in all the time. You still get your politics. You're going to get it wherever. But yeah, you're right. It's a very community based here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sometimes you can go to games in Toronto some nights, and I've done it over the years where and it's not just Toronto, but there's agents there. The kids are trying to play. There's agents. There's parents. There's bars upstairs. The parents are drinking. There's scouts there. I mean, I was part of it as a scout, and I used to sit back and wonder, is like, are these kids playing for the right reasons? Like, are they just playing because they love it, or is it because of everything else that's out there? And I love hockey in its purest form. Like when you've got the small towns, and again, people coaching for the right reasons, players playing for the right reasons. There's genuine passion there, and sometimes that gets lost in the bigger cities.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yep. What do you got from Chad? I know you're dying there. I'm hogging spotlight here.
Oh, that's all right. I'm not I was gonna say back with the 89 Peterborough Petes, you had Tie Domi on that roster.
Yep.
How was that? How was he as a junior player? That's like something I don't usually see much of. It's all Leafs and Winnipeg and Rangers, but what was it like with the Petes?
You know what, Chad? I could write a book on Tie. We had him for 3 years.
Yeah, I figured.
And, the one thing I got to give Tie credit for, and I'll just go back to kind of why we drafted Tie, because that year prior to drafting Tie, we had a really good team, and we thought we were a pretty tough team. Belleville beat us out in the conference finals, and they had guys like you've probably never heard of, but Darren Moxham, Todd Hawkins. They were small, like not huge guys, but really tough. And we thought, man, like we need somebody like that. And Ty was playing junior B in Windsor, and interestingly enough, his coach the previous year was Marcel Pronovo, who's a Hall of Famer, played for the Leafs. But we drafted Ty, and when he first came to Peterborough, his whole focus was fighting. And I can still remember clear as day his first OHL fight. And if you don't mind me, I can ramble on here, but I'll tell you.
Take your time.
It's a neat story. So we were playing in Kingston right at the start of the year, and they had a guy by the name of Mark LaForge, who was far and away the toughest guy in the OHL. And we had a really tough team too. We had guys like Chris King and different guys. But before the game, they were talking, just leave LaForge alone. Like, just leave him. He doesn't, if you wake him up. And so halfway through the conversation, I remember clear as day, Ty just looked up and said, who are you guys talking about? He's number 18 on Kingston. Just leave him alone. He's scary tough. Ty was like 5'9" or whatever. And he just says, I'll look after him. Don't worry about him. And the guys are like, yeah, okay. Well, first shift against him, Ty gave it to him. And we're like, whoa, we might have something here. But the problem with Ty, his first year, and if you look up his stats, he only played 18 games. And that was because we had a tradition in Peterborough that we used to run 5 miles in the mornings, sometimes three days a week in the fall. And we would go right up to when it snowed, and no other team did that. And Ty used to tell us, I'm not a runner, I'm not doing it. And we say, well, if you don't do it, you don't play, and he thought that he could win. And we'd say, until you start doing what we do, you're not playing. And so we only played 18 games. And yeah. And at one point he came to us and said, if you guys aren't playing me, I'm quitting, and we said, okay, see you later. And an hour later he says, okay, I'll stay. But the light went on, and Ty started to work, and he was far and away the toughest guy in the league, but he became a really good player. And he played on a line his second or third year. His center was Mike Ricci, and his left winger was a guy named Billy Heward, who was a heavyweight in the NHL as well. So we had Billy Heward on left wing, had Mike or Tie on right wing, and then Reach was free to do as he pleased. But just wow. Tie had he was an athlete. So once he started working, he became a very good player. But I've never seen a guy that could intimidate like Tie, and he had a memory. And I remember one night we were playing Windsor. We only played them twice a year. And he said, tonight's the night. I'm going to get this guy on Windsor like he's dead, And I said, why? Like, we only played him once. And he looked at me, he says, you don't remember 2 years ago, he was lipping me in warm up.
Don't hold a grudge though.
Yeah. So, he could say the right thing at the right time. He could back it up. And I can honestly say a lot of times we had games won before teams even got off the bus because they did not want to play him. And, people that didn't respect him, he hurt them. And, but he was a good player too. Like he could do more than just fight, but he had to learn how to maximize his ability, and he did, and went on obviously to play over 1,000 games in the NHL. So, but Chad, I could write a book on Tie stories, and they're all
I'd read it.
And they're all good. Like they're all good. He was an entertainer.
Yeah, how did he get tied up in the Argos? That was the whole rumor that he could have kicked for the Argos or something?
He was a soccer player,
Yeah, that's right.
I'll give you an example. We played in Windsor his first year, which is where he's from, and we put him in the lineup. And halfway through the game in the old Windsor Arena, which it was Windsor's a tough town, and the old arena was right downtown. And I looked up in the crowd, and there was a fight going on, and in the fight was Tie's father, and he had a guy bent over a seat, and I said, Tie, like your dad's in trouble up there. And he looked, he can take care of himself. So after the game, I said, like, if that's me, I'm probably got to go up into the stands because it's my dad, and Ty looked at me and he said, hey, my dad escaped Albania dodging machine gun fire. So he goes, that's nothing.
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what? Genuinely tough, but really good team guy, and became a really good player, underrated good player. So he was a guy though, when he left, I was sad to see him go because it's like, oh boy, teams are going to be looking for us now that Tie's gone.
Yeah. That's right. Payback time.
There's some retribution coming.
Yeah. But if you go through the history in Peterborough, we always had like tough teams, and we had a lot of tough guys, that came through here, and that was always a mandate. So we weren't long replaced. Well, we could never replace them, but coming close anyways.
It was hard to see either Domi in a Habs uniform, I will admit. That was kind of, it stung. It was
great. I love seeing Max there, but Tie, that one I didn't like Tie because that's a Leaf,
That's right. Yeah.
You shouldn't be putting it on. But
no one liked that, not even Tie. But he took the picture anyway. Max liked it. That was it. Max had a charge of that.
The shit you do for kids, man.
But Tie is an entertainer, and he understands the media and all that stuff. So he's an interesting guy. But we had 3 good years, and he was a 7th round pick. Like he wasn't even an early pick to us. And
wow.
So anyways, yeah, like I said, I could write a book on him.
Yeah, I believe it.
Maybe you should.
Yeah.
That could be one of those hockey bestsellers.
Can I tell you one quick more, so
tell 10 if you want.
Whatever you got.
This is how Tie was. So we went into Oshawa his rookie year, and that was that's a rivalry. That's a heated rivalry that, we're only 45 minutes apart, and teams hate each other. And those were really tough games, not for the faint of heart. And
only a true turncoat would work for both franchises, but continue.
Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that. But anyways, so we went in there, and they had a guy, Tony Joseph was a huge, big, tough guy, and it was Ty's first game, and Tie was coming off the ice, and the benches used to be beside each other, and Tony Joseph was screaming at him how he was going to get him the next shift. And most young guys, when you're a rookie, you're going to stop and you're going to kind of stutter or say something back and then scoot off the ice. But Tie, I still remember to this day, Tie stopped before he was coming off the ice, stared right at him. And he said, yeah, okay. He says, next shift we'll go. But he said, I guarantee you're going to be eating your Christmas dinner out of a straw. And I remember, Tony Joseph kind of sat down, but I was looking at him and said, man, that's a 17-year-old kid that just said that. Like, I can't, so there was nothing phony about him. He was, he was genuinely legit tough. And again, a good player too.
Yeah. No, the skill set was obviously there, and he passed on to his son, and that was quite evident, still is. Max, to be able to play at the level he's played at, along with his challenges to diabetes and the things that he's battled through.
I think he's really gonna come back this year in Columbus and have a better year. He didn't have a great year, but I think he's gonna bounce back.
I don't think anybody had a good year in Columbus, to be fair.
No,
you know,
good point.
No, they got a little thing going on that they can turn it around. I think next year. I really think you're right. I think it's gonna. Same thing with Laine. I think he's gonna do it as well.
Yeah,
you can't keep those players down long. I mean, that's just science. You simply cannot.
But what's really interesting is Pierre-Luc Dubois, it may take him until next year to get going in Winnipeg too. Like that looked like a great trade for both teams, but neither one kind of worked out. But I think they both will.
Well, what are they? 23, 24 years old? I mean, transplanting players that early in their career and into established teams and established lineups is not always, a Gretzky trade to Los Angeles. This takes a little bit of coaching. That's why there are coaches, right?
Yeah, that's why you're exactly right.
That's right. And both coming out of turbulent situations and moving in the middle of a pandemic, it's kind of a hard year for everyone. And I don't even treat it as a real year. I can't anymore anyway. Makes me sleep better. No,
in talking
he's
about
throwing shade all day.
Talking about tough teams and amazing franchises, you had the opportunity to work for Oshawa later after your time with the Petes, 30 years with the Petes, and then moved on to Oshawa for a couple of years. I'm curious. I mean, you came up through that system. You knew everyone in the system. You were part of the system. You were the system for a long time. So, what kind of reaction among your inner circle of hockey friends in Peterborough was it when you were like, okay, I'm going to take the general manager's job with the Oshawa Generals?
Well, it was interesting because after 30 years in Peterborough, they fired me. They wanted
you didn't owe them anything.
Yeah, so that's here and there, but so I really wasn't happy with how it ended, and still have some bitterness there. But the thing in Oshawa came about because Pete DeBoer and Adam Graves owned a big chunk of the Generals, and I was always, Pete and I had a good relationship, and he kind of talked to me about coming back, and Adam Graves was there, and there was another guy, Rocco Tullio, who they were the three owners, and I thought, man, I didn't like the way it ended in Peterborough, and I'm going to do this. And I was very fortunate because Don Maloney, who was the coach or the general manager in Arizona, and he gave me permission to talk to them. And to this day, I don't know how often this happens, but Don told me, he said, if this doesn't work out in Oshawa, you can always come back. Mm-hmm. So I had a safety net, which was incredible. But, I went to Oshawa, and I remember looking at my wife after. It's like, man, this is different. And I had they gave me a jacket with the Oshawa Generals. I put it on. I was like, man, that feels weird, But the funny part was the fans in Oshawa were great. They were really good. And I bought a place right downtown. The people there were really good to me, and it got. I mean, when you think 20 years prior to that, I wouldn't even let my wife shop in Oshawa. Seriously, it was hatred, and to be working for them was strange, but it was such a historic franchise, and the people that had come through there, a guy by the name of Wayne Daniels, who was a general manager there, Sherry Bass, and there's such a history there that I just felt I'm the luckiest guy. I was with Peterborough, and now I'm in Oshawa, but and I had free reign there. So we hired DJ Smith, obviously who's with Ottawa now as our first coach, and him and I worked really well together. And I don't think that year we lost a game to Peterborough too, which was even better. And just funny story on that. My wife, she's French Canadian, so she has a long memory, and her bitterness towards Peterborough still to this day. But she went to DJ Smith, who was living in Oshawa by himself, and she said, listen, every time you beat Peterborough, you get a home cooked meal. So DJ was like, you're on. And I don't think we lost a game that year. So,
no way.
And the one
good
night
deals.
We beat them in a playoff game one night, and she had told him, if you win this game, you get brownies. So after the game we won, and DJ's like, where's Nicole? Where's my brownies? she won't even set foot in the rink. So I said, I don't know, maybe she forgot. So we get on the rink, they're on the bus, and there they were. All the brownies were there. She delivered them to the bus and went right home. she
No way.
in the rink. So, so there was a lot of fun there. And you know, after a couple of years, the ownership kind of changed, and I took Don Maloney up on his offer and went back to Arizona. So it all worked out. I miss Oshawa because I really liked it there, but very fortunate to spend a couple of years there.
Yeah. I'm curious when you talk about Smith, because I find him to be one of the more interesting characters in hockey currently, because I follow junior hockey as much as anybody out in this side of the country, where we don't get it anymore. We had the Fog Devils for a couple of miserable years, but we don't get an opportunity to watch a lot of it because it's just simply not televised. And so we follow primarily through the box scores and everything else. And I'll be first to admit, when the Leafs hired Smith as an assistant coach, I said, who?
Yeah.
The name just didn't. I was like, I think I heard the name, but I didn't. I had to do my research. But most of the time, I usually got a fair idea where a coach comes from, and I didn't really know. And I was like, okay, I guess this is just a one-off, or a guy who's just going to come in, will disappear into the abyss sooner than later. But sure enough, he had great success there with the Leafs. He made them better. I got no question of that in my mind. He made that team better. To the point where it was taken note of. His career spoke for itself. He had a good junior career. But what is it about DJ as a coach that makes him as good as he is currently? Because I mean, he's got a super young team.
Yeah, he's far and away, Ryan, I would say the best coach that I was ever involved with. And just to backtrack, when I started the process in Oshawa, you know, I said to the ownership, I said, I'm going to really take my time on this because I got to have an open mind. I'm going to interview as many people as I can. So I interviewed 25 guys, which is a lot. You know, to go through that process 25 times is a lot.
Yeah.
I met DJ in Windsor one night. He was the second guy I interviewed. And I still remember driving home that night, and my wife was asking me, you know, how'd it go? And I said, I just interviewed the next Dale Hunter, you know, who I have so much respect for with the London Knights.
It's high praise.
Yeah, well, first of all, he's a great guy to work with because he is the funniest human being on the face of the planet. He is so funny, but he's all business too. And, you know, he's got genuine passion for coaching. It's 24/7 for him. So he's current. He's very relatable to the young guys, like the players. They relate, that everybody loves him as a player because he was a player. He played for the St. John's, for the Leafs there for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so he bases a lot of what he does on how he would have reacted as a player. But he can be hard on guys, but he's also very close to the players. So it's a combination of things, Ryan. Like it's his passion, which is genuine. Like a lot of these guys coaching now, I see it's all about getting to the next level and, you know, it's ego based a lot, not all of them, but a lot of in the hockey.
Yeah.
DJ it's just hockey to the point where, you know, in Oshawa, I used to have to grab his suits every Monday and take him to the dry cleaner because he didn't care. He'd just take them and throw them, and I'd go get them dry cleaned so they were pressed for him. So he looked half decent, but there's nothing phony about him. And when he was going to Ottawa, Pierre Dorion called me just to get my opinion on what he was like to work for. And my sense was Pierre had a little bit of hesitation, but because he wasn't a big name, you know, and I remember saying to Pierre, like, well, what does your gut tell you? And he said, well, my gut tells me he'd be a good fit. I said, well, trust me, you can trust your gut. So working with him for 2 years was incredible. And I'll tell you a story. Like this is how DJ thinks. It's all about the team. He's a loyal guy. He came to me one time and he said, are you coming with us we're going up to Sudbury and Barrie? And I said, yeah, I'm going to come. He says, why don't you go on the bench with me? And I said, I haven't coached for like 20 years. And he said, no, just come on the bench, you know. I said, I don't want to do that, you know. And then I got thinking about it. And I said, you know, as a general manager, it'd be good for me to reinforce kind of how hard it is and how fast it is. And it looks easy up above.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to him, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. So how many coaches in junior hockey particular are going to invite their GM to come on the bench with them?
In any hockey.
Yeah.
So
the relationship is fickle from time most of the time to begin with. There's a lot of tension, you know, in a lot of teams. It's well known. Having that relationship with your coach must have been incredible, to be honest.
Yeah, and
hey boss, look over my shoulder.
and he would listen, like, you know, and he would listen to my suggestions and either agree or disagree, whatever. I mean, but the one thing I tell people all the time about DJ, and I tell, I've got a son-in-law that's a fairly high-level soccer coach, and I said, you know, the one thing about DJ that separates him, he believes in his mind he's the best coach in the NHL. Like, now, whether he is or he isn't, that's irrelevant, but in his mind, he is. And you know, that translates down to the players, and players love playing for him. I mean, you see Brady Tkachuk, like, he's not going anywhere. He wants to, you know, so it's a long-winded answer, but you know, he's a really special person, special coach. So as I said, interviewed 25 guys. I went back to him like 3 times because I kept thinking this can't be, you know, and I go back and try and catch him on something. I'd say, well, what would you do in this situation? I'm like, geez, everything. That's exactly what I'd do. That's what I was looking for, you know? So he's really good. He's got a long, bright future in the NHL.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised when he got hired a little bit because I think Melnick was after making fun of the Maple Leafs defense, and JJ Smith, I think, was the defensive coordinator. Yeah. Next, you know, he got hired as the head coach. I was like, well, that was kind of unexpected.
Well, I mean, it was
Melnick's a bit of a crackpot, but I mean, you know,
it was totally worked out Melnick's face anyway, because he made fun of the Leafs defense and he hired their defensive coach as their head coach, and then traded for Ron Hainsey and Nikita Zaitsev.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, and both turned out to be great ads for the Senators. So
like Connor Brown, let's not forget that. He's like another defensive
DJ's influence too, you know, and I had an ex-player, a goalie that I brought into Oshawa, Zach Burke, who was an ex-NHL goalie as well. And he's outstanding at what he does. And Ottawa hired him 2 or 3 months ago, hired him away from Arizona. And that was DJ. Like, he recognizes guys that are good at what they do. So he's a special guy. Ottawa's they're a fun team to watch. Like, took a slow start this year early on, but once they figured it out, man, they were in every game, and they're fun to watch.
They gave everybody fits. Everybody they played, the North Division, they gave everybody fits later in the year. They were an unpredictable team. They were highly, highly skilled. Those young guys, the Bathersons, the Norrises, the guys who people haven't heard of before, that anybody who's been watching hockey knows these names, but these guys are just not lucky good. They've been good for a long time, and now they've developed them properly, and man, they got a team.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch that team. They've got a chance to be really good. So you know, everything keeps working well around DJ, because that's one area they got no worries about.
Yeah, and I picked them in the very first pilot terrible episode. You don't have to watch it, but I'll let you know. I did pick them to be a little bit of a dark horse and be like, you know, you don't know what's coming out of these guys, because they literally are a bunch of misfits and they have nothing to lose. And if they find some chemistry, they're going to do some damage. And I'm, you know, being a Toronto fan, it's going to be hard to watch next year. I'm dreading it.
But you know what, Chad, it's going to be interesting too, because they're so young and the expectations are going to change this year.
Exactly. We've seen that as Leafs fans. It was really cute the year that Matthews and Marner and Nylander came into the league. Oh, how cute is this? Yeah. I mean, you got a guy, he's always putting up 30, 40 goals. Oh, that's so cute. Look at this little guy who can make all the passes. So cute. Look at a little Swedish kid with the nice hair. So cute.
And then you just outlined Tkachuk and Batherson's, you know,
Norris,
battlers.
You know, Shabbat, like there's some, so they're poised to be really good long term.
Yeah.
And I think DJ can manage the expectations, and I think, you know, he's going to be fine. But again, it's just going to be everything around them. You just hope that, you know, you've got because listen, Rome wasn't built in a day, obviously.
No.
We fans know.
Or
you got to have some patience there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Matt Murray's got to hold it down as well. But if all these guys connected to you going to Ottawa, why don't they just complete the set and get Jeff on the go?
Well, you know what? It would be great, but that's one thing about the Senators. They've got a really good scouting staff there. Obviously, they've drafted well, and you know, they don't need any help. So, but that's the team it'd be nice to be part of. But again, their history. Trent Mann is the head scout there. He's done a really good job.
So, I used to watch Josh Norris play street hockey across the street from my parents' house as a toddler.
Yeah, Dwayne Norris's son, right?
They grew up across the street from me. Okay. And, so it was pretty cool seeing those guys come back in the summer and seeing 2 little kids. And me and my brother, like, it'd be cool if, like, you know, they played in the NHL one of these days, because their dad, like, should have and never really. So and he's doing really well for himself.
Oh yeah, he's a good player. So.
He's excellent. Yeah.
Well, like I said, when I started taking notice of the Senators this year, because I was never one for Senators hockey. I was all, I mean, I'm still booing and Daniel Alfredson. You know, like I was never a fan. I like, and this is a mouthful for me to say, and it kind of turns my stomach a little bit, but I'm a bigger Canadians fan than I am a Senators fan. Like I really dislike the Senators. That Battle of Ontario back in when I was growing up, when it was at its, you know, hottest, Chris Neal, you know, the throwing the stick over the glass, Daniel Alfredson, the whole, like that whole era is my hockey growing up, and I'll never be a Senators fan, but I was kind of forced into it this year to watch some of their games because I was just so hungry for hockey. I found myself tuning in for the odd Ottawa, Vancouver game or whatever, and seeing Norris center the second or the top line. He didn't look one bit out of place at all. So I'm really excited to see where he goes.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be fun to watch for sure, especially again when the expectations change. No, they're
that's
not
right.
gonna anybody next year. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. You know.
No,
they've been
and the Atlantic goes back into form too.
Yeah,
they've been a well-managed team and they've drafted well. I mean, the trades, all the good players that we're talking about here, all came via a trade of some sort that got him a draft pick or got him a. I mean, Tim Stützle should never be an Ottawa Senator.
No.
And if you look at the culture that was coming out of Ottawa for the last few years, it's hard to get good players to go to that. You know, it's just been trouble after trouble after trouble, and the rink is still an hour outside. And like, you know, it looked like it was really, you know, going down the crapper, and it's like now it's, you know, the players have turned it around, and DJ Smith has turned it around.
And he's a guy too. Like players talk, and you know, he's a guy that guys like to play for. You know, and you know, and in a cap league like it is now, drafting and developing is so crucial. You know, and they've got their American League team right in Belleville, which is, I don't know, an hour and a half away, whatever it is, very close. So they're poised to be pretty good. And you know, again, draft and develop, that's such a key factor now in the cap world, especially flat cap for a couple of years. So they are poised to be pretty good.
Yeah, you need stuff in the cupboards to come cheap when you need them. Yeah. And now they got Pierre McGuire just got hired.
Yeah, I seen that. That was kind of an odd hire for me.
I wasn't expecting that either. I thought his
I mean, the guy knows the prospects. There's no doubt about that. He thrives on that. He loves to tell people how much
he's had a great hockey career as well, though. Right?
Yeah. It'll be interesting, the dynamics with him and Pierre Dorion. Like, you just hope that, you know, everybody stays in their lane and park their egos, because they've got a chance.
Exactly.
And sometimes that can, you know, that can ruin everything. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
And under Melnick at the end of the day. So it's not easy.
No, it isn't.
Involved owner for sure.
But like I said, I got so much respect for how they draft and develop, and DJ as a coach. So they're a good team to watch.
I'm glad we got
for Canadian hockey,
because again, he's one of those guys who fascinated me. The little bit of time he spent with the Leafs, I found him to be a fascinating guy. You know, he didn't really have the tools that he would have needed to put together an A+ defense. If he had the defensive core that we have currently with the TJ Brodies and the Jake Muzzins and the Zach Bogosians, and you're familiar with Zach, of course. These guys, I think, if they can bring back all 6 that we had this year, I think we got a competitive team again in the fall. I really think that the team underperformed against Montreal somehow, but it wasn't a defensive problem. First time in eons of my playoff watching career as a Leafs fan that defense was not even something it didn't touch my lips, you know. So
but it's really like when you get up 3-1, and I think they talked about it in the series, they just didn't, you know, put their foot on the throat, you know, and
that's right. They got no killer instinct.
Yeah. And you know, I love what Marc Bergevin did in Montreal. Like, and you go back a couple of years when he made that trade, and I've talked about this before, when he traded for Shea Weber and the heat he took for trading PK Subban.
Yeah.
I mean, myself from a distance, it's easier. I said I would make that trade all day long. I'd make it in a heartbeat. But for Marc Bergevin to do that in Montreal, that took big balls to do that. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
And he did it, you know, and so I don't know Marc Bergevin. I've met him a couple times, but you know, and they say he might challenge DJ for the funniest human. You know, he's apparently but I think he's done a great job of looking forward and seeing what's successful in the playoffs, like, you know, adding Ben Sherratt, Shea Weber, you know, guys like that. Like that was a playoff ready team. And part of the problem and I'm kind of rambling, but for the Leafs, the season was probably easier than it should have been, and when they got a little tougher for them, they weren't ready for it. They didn't have enough adversity during the season, I don't think,
Right.
to really be able to lean on it when they had to. Montreal, I mean, they just snuck into the playoffs at the end there. So they were,
And
and
the Tavares decapitation kind of took the steam out of game one altogether. I find
100%.
like the heart left the building that day,
Yes.
but
yeah, you can't underestimate that, because John Tavares was he's a pivotal guy for that team. So you're right. You can't underestimate the loss of him.
it was a traumatic sight for everybody, not just for him. And just watching that whole wobble, it's just like, okay, nobody needs to see that now. And let's move on to game two.
Yeah.
I'm curious of your take. I mean, I know your general manager career you didn't have to work with a cap system like general managers in the NHL do, but what's your take on the Toronto situation there, where they've got all that money invested up front? I mean, I'm still a fan. I'm not convinced yet that it's not a something that can work. But what's your take on the top four eating up so much of that cap?
Well, first of all, in junior, Ryan, you don't work under a salary cap, but in a small market, you somewhat do, because you're limited. We couldn't. I mean, let's be honest. There's deals that are made under the table. There's rules. Not every team follows them. We had to follow them. So we were basically a small market cap team. We could only do so much. So we had to be creative. And work a little harder and find different ways. We had to go out to Newfoundland and find Daniel Ryder, like things like that. So we were a very small market. This is a small city here in Peterborough. But I'm not convinced that it's going to work in Toronto with those four guys, like with that much money tied up in them. And Kyle Dubas is a smart guy. He's a young guy. He's very smart. Wasn't too long in junior. But I just don't know why they gave Nylander the money they did. And I know it looks like it's not a bad deal now, but he didn't have any leverage really. And
that's right.
They kind of caved to him, which surprised me. And those guys are all elite players, no question. They're good players, but I don't know. I think you've got to spread that money out. Like you see the really good teams, like a team like Boston, you've got your top players taking less money to win, until they get that mentality. And one of the things I worry about in Toronto, there's so many distractions there, and you're put on such a pedestal. And I think it was Wendell Clark or somebody said it once that, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. But they're on such a pedestal there, and there's so many distractions that it's really hard. And the teams like Boston, or even a team like Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby took less, to give his team a chance. Well, I don't see anybody in Toronto taking less. I see
and
more,
And we got Zach Hyman. This thing is dragging on, apparently, according to Friedman.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting, because that's a guy that I wouldn't want to lose, but he can't.
No, you need that.
You can't, he can't cheat himself that, to fit him in, he's going to be grossly underpaid.
Right.
So that's why I'm not sure it's going to work with all those guys eating up that much cap space, but we'll see.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And that's I guess that's kind of the mentality of the whole hockey world. Everyone's kind of looking at this. I guess the only way we'll know is if we could fast forward another 5 years here and see what's on the other side, because it's not been done before. I think that's why everyone's so curious about how this is going to shake out, because they're so top heavy. Yeah. And let's face it, the cupboard is not full of prospects that are ready to jump in. Outside of Nick Robertson, Rasmus Sandin, who's not really a prospect, he got a part of a year in. There's not a lot of guys down there who are going to be sitting on entry-level deals for 3 or 4 years that you're going to be able to take advantage of.
And we go back to draft and develop, right? And
that's right.
It's all about, you need those picks. But I forget what the stat was, but somebody came up with a stat, like of the top 30 highest paid players in the NHL, or whatever the number was, as the playoffs went on, there was only like 2 of them still playing,
Yeah.
And so I really admire the Boston Bruins and what they do, with Marchand and the culture they've built there with Bergeron and they lost Chara, but just that culture, and that's how you win, building that culture, having players that, they're willing to, they'll do whatever they have to do to win. Winning is the priority. And until they get that in Toronto, and maybe they will in time, but until they do, that it's first and foremost, I think it's going to be a struggle just because it's such a huge stage there.
It's the and also it's the taxes. The Canadian taxes kind of steer, like that's what's driving up the big salaries. You eat up that one set cap, and they got to, like, Matthews is probably going to clear the same amount of money as I don't know, Kucherov.
Yeah, no, there's some
less.
truth to that. Yeah, if you're in Florida, obviously or Texas, it's a lot less for sure. So.
Right. So there's also that to consider. I think it was if he was in Vegas, his salary would be like 8.8 million, I think it was.
Yeah.
So it's that's also a funny thing there too. It's just, it's the cap, and this is what it is.
But think of this too. If you go in there, take a little less, and do what you have to do to win, and you ultimately win, then you don't have to worry about working the rest of your life, because guys like Dougie Gilmore or Tie Domi, and they're not all high profile guys. If you played for the Leafs, there's a lot of opportunities for the rest of your life. And if you're on a winning team, you're set.
Well,
and these guys are best friends with Justin Bieber. I mean, you're doing okay.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to be okay. And that's what we've been saying on this podcast forever. It's just Jason Spezza, one of the greatest players of our generation, continually taking league min deals. Full well the writing's on the wall for him in the front office when this is all said and done. When he chooses not to play anymore, that's already been pre-established. At least that's my opinion. I have nothing to back that up with, folks, but that's my opinion. Is that man is going right from the skates into a suit and front and center in some sort of player development status.
Well, like you said about JJ Smith, he's there for hockey and hockey only.
Yeah, and let's not canonize Jason Spezza as a saint yet. You're right. Like, he's taken less, but there's opportunities that are going to come his way for sure.
And he's done all right. Leading up to that, he's doing okay.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for Spezza.
No.
I am loving it for our cap situation.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess we've been talking NHL hockey now for a better part of 20 minutes. We got to talk about your time in Arizona. So, I mean, 7 years is not a cup of tea. That's not a cup of coffee. That's quite a large chunk of your professional career in hockey. Take us through, first and foremost, how you ended up with that opportunity. Like, who was it that brought you in, and how did that arise, and your reaction to the opportunity to finally get a chance to work at the highest level. And then, of course, we want to talk about some of the players that you were impactful in drafting. So, take us through the.
Yeah, well, I got it when I got fired in Peterborough. It was just luck, because Arizona had they had a scout in Ontario they had let go, and Don Maloney again was the general manager. I've known Don; he's a little older than me, but we grew up in the same town, and his parents and my parents were very close growing up. So have a long history with Don, and just happened, and whether you have those histories or not, they don't create jobs for you. It just was luck that they needed somebody, and Don knew me and brought me in, and I thought, NHL scouting, this will be great, because in junior you can sometimes go 12-hour days at tournaments. You're all day. At NHL, it's one game a day. This will be easy. Then you start realizing, it's a whole different ball game up there. It probably took me a year to really get a feel for scheduling. A lot of the rinks I was going into out west or in Quebec, I'd never been before. So once you kind of get a feel for the buildings, the leagues, you start to, it was good. I really liked it there. I enjoyed Arizona. If you've ever been to Phoenix or to Arizona at all, it's one of the best. I could have stayed there forever. I love going there, and after 7 years, you know the PR people, the trainers, you're part of it. You feel part of it, and it was great. Like, and I could see it. I could see it as an organization that if they could get some solid ownership and get some continuity in there, who wouldn't want to play there? I mean, it's every day. It's a blue sky. It's it's like every day is the weekend.
Summer all day.
Yeah, so it was great. I loved it, and then
they made Austin Matthews is not watching this podcast. Anyway, continue.
Well, I'll tell you about Austin Matthews. We had a development camp for our young draft picks the one year, and we were sitting there in July, and I looked down and I said, pretty sure that's Austin Matthews. He was going into his draft year, and he was there. I think he was there for like 3 straight days watching, and he was going to get drafted the next year. So he was just a young guy, but he was there. So that kind of tells you he's focused on it. But it's a beautiful place. I loved it there. Near the end, they brought in some people that kind of had different philosophies than mine, and it was a incredibly difficult decision. But in 2018, I think it was November, I just I just called John Chychrun and I said I'm out. I can't be part of this. And they got into some trouble after that with some of the things they were doing for the draft and just different.
That's right. Yeah.
Some of the trades just it not that it was right or wrong, but it didn't go with what I valued in an organization and how to run a team. And it didn't make me right, but I just couldn't stay there. The difficult part is when you walk away, they don't pay you. So it would have been better to get fired, because then they would have had to pay me. But when I did
no way.
I did it on my own. They don't pay you. But for me, it was an ethical thing. And I walked away and I'm very proud of what we did there. I was actually the assistant director of amateur scouting. An ex-Leaf, Tim Bernhardt, was the director, who is one of the best scouts I've ever been around. I learned so much from him. And we were really getting to a point there. If they had left the staff we had alone, we were really doing some good things there, drafting. Everybody knew their role. Everybody knew what we were looking for, how we did it. And so to walk away was difficult. I have no regrets about doing it, but it wasn't easy. So, but the 7 years there were good. We had some good players, some good drafts. Unfortunately, most of them have been traded. So
yeah,
other organizations.
They're a funny one there.
The key piece that always sticks out, obviously. I mean, it's one of, he's going to be a franchise player. I'm guessing he's still young, but Clayton Keller. I mean, you guys must have been over the moon that guy was still available when it came to your time to select, eh?
Yeah, we were lucky too. Like I had seen Clayton when I was in Oshawa. I had seen him in a tournament somewhere in Michigan when even before he went to the program in Ann Arbor. And then when he was in Ann Arbor, I was lucky because you can get there easy from Ontario. So I saw him a lot, and we didn't draft him just because of me. We had multiple looks by many people on our staff, but I was lucky. I saw him a lot, and Tim saw him a lot, and we kind of had him targeted, and we kind of had a feeling he was going to be there. And then when he was, he's a good player. I don't know if they rushed him a little bit there. Maybe he should have stayed a little bit longer in school, but he's a good player with a really bright future. So smart, so creative and competitive. He's a good player.
Yeah. Well, same with Jakob Chychrun. I mean, I think he's a prime example of a defenseman who could have benefited from another little bit of time either in minors or wherever you want. But it seems like they might have pulled him into the system a little quick in trying to build something fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, what an exceptional player,
Yeah, he and there's another guy I had a history with, and I, just because I had a history, that's not why we drafted Jakob Chychrun. I mean, it's a staff, but I first met Jakob when I was in Oshawa. I think it was in Oshawa. He was playing for Detroit Little Caesars, and I was at a tournament and down again in Michigan again, and Larry Kelly, who was a sports agent, lawyer, one of the most respected lawyer agents in the business, represented his father, Jeff Chychrun. And so he came to me in Michigan. He was there, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come and meet Jakob?" And I went and met him. And when he walked away, I looked at Larry Kelly. I said, "That kid's 14." Like he wasn't even eligible for the OHL draft at that point. And so we watched him play. He came into Toronto the next year to play, and AAA. Watched him there. Went to Sarnia first overall. Watched him a lot there, and we moved up to get him in the draft. Paid a huge price, but got him. And he's a specimen. I mean, he's a big, strong guy that can skate, shoot the puck. Just again, you just got to get the pieces around him. Tough part in Arizona, they've got so many unrestricted guys on their blue line that I don't know how they're going to compliment him. That Bill Armstrong's got his work cut out for him. I mean, I'm sure he'll figure it out, but Jakob, he can be a 1-2 defenseman on most teams in the NHL for sure.
Yeah, that opinion doesn't surprise me at all. Watching him play, he's so fluid in the way he skates, moves the puck. The hockey IQ is clearly there.
And a hammer.
Yeah. No, Phoenix has always been a bit of an enigma for me in that sense, because like you said, they've made some good trades. They've made some other questionable trades. Well, the biggest questionable trade that I wanted to ask you about, it would have been during your time there as well. I might as well flash the picture up on the screen so we can see it. Give me a second to share this screen, because I'm going to say in the short history, well, not a short history, I guess the Coyotes been around a while,
Yep.
but the one that made the most noise obviously would have been the Taylor Hall trade, and I mean, Nick Merkley. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He was a late first rounder, I think.
30th, I think, overall. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's playing for Jersey now.
Yeah, yeah. So again, he was kind of brought into the system a little quick and whatnot too, and a lot of expectations because he had that number one or first round draft pick attached to him.
The problem
But,
with
I
him
mean,
too, though, he had a couple of really serious knee injuries that he overcame.
Yeah.
And for him to be playing in Jersey right now, credit to him, because those were serious knee injuries, and he got himself back to the point now he's an NHL player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm curious to see how his trajectory goes because of that. Because a lot of people, one injury, one bad season as a 20-year-old kid, and they brush you off as a total bust, first round bust, right?
Yeah, no.
But yeah, no, he's got a lot of upside, and of course there was a 2020 first round pick included in that trade as well. So I'm wondering.
Dubas will wait and get him.
Yeah, so around the team at that time, Jeff, like what was the consensus? Was it we need to get this guy because we actually think we've got a shot at this, or is it because there was no real indication that there was any sign that Taylor was interested in staying in Phoenix, and it was quite the price tag to pay for him.
The problem was, we weren't brought into a lot of those conversations. A lot of times trades were made and we found out about it. And I think at that point I had left. I think it was the year I left. But historically they didn't, John Chychrun was very guarded in what he shared and didn't get a lot of opinions on things. But, one of the guys that's underrated in that trade is Kevin Ball. I mean, he's a world junior, 6'6" defenseman. I don't think they appreciated what he is going to be capable of doing. I mean, you look at a guy like Logan Stanley in Winnipeg. There's some similarities with Kevin, and we drafted him in the second round with the Coyotes because we really lack some size on the blue line, and you see now how important that is. Like, you can't have a small. You got to be able to move, but Kevin Ball can skate too. He's just a guy that's got to grow into his body, but he's got about a 10-foot wingspan and defends really well. And as a rookie this year, he got into games with New Jersey. So that's a 6'6" defenseman that can skate. Nate Schnarr is a big center that's really smart. And if you look up his numbers, he just progressively got better and better. We got him in the third round. I think he's a 3-4 center at some point for New Jersey because he's so smart and he's got size, and he's had a history of putting up good numbers. So just to see, again, I had walked away because I could see potential for stuff like that happening, but to see those guys go from a scouting perspective, that was hard. And I could accept it if you thought you were close to winning, but I think the goal there at the time was to kind of speed up the process towards winning. But that never works. You've got to go through the process. And so they gave away some significant pieces there. And, Taylor Hall had a really good history in junior of winning, but his history in the NHL until this year with Boston, really, there's no playoff success there. So
his team always wins the first overall draft pick.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So anyways, again, I had just left, but I did not feel good about that trade because, again, as scouts, you understand what your role is. You've got to find players, and at the NHL level, players are assets that you use, either it's currency, whatever you want to call it, but to win at the NHL level or to acquire pieces to help you win. But you don't win without depth. And when you're eating away at your depth all the time, you're not going to win. So no. I saw it personally from a distance as a significant step back. And I think that's what it's turned out to be.
Yeah, and I thought it could have been like, are they trying to bring in a marquee name for attention? Like, is it a marketing thing?
Yeah, is it a ticket sale thing? That's exactly what
it wasn't a hockey thing.
Yeah,
it didn't seem like a hockey thing.
Winning's going to bring people in.
Yeah.
And a vision where you're trying to get to, and you've got to understand, like, there's a process here. We have to go through. You can't circumvent the process. You'll never win that way. And again, Ottawa's a prime example. They're growing as a group, and they're not, I mean, at some point they're going to have to give away some guys when they're close to winning, but I think they know where they're at now. And with Arizona, it was just, you're cheating the process. It doesn't work. So,
yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah. It's from a scouting perspective, it's bad because we really believed in those guys. Like Kevin Ball was a player.
Right.
We really wanted him. And
Yeah,
because those guys are hard to find. And, you know, again, we look at Montreal, big defense. You look at Tampa, big defense, you know, so we were trying to follow that model. And when you got a 6'6" guy sitting there in the second round and played in Ottawa for a coach, Andre Turigny, who was a world junior coach, who's one of the best coaches in junior, we're like, this guy can't help but get better, you know?
that's
So,
right.
Stop playing not to get better.
yeah. So unfortunately he did get better, but now he's going to play for somebody else. So that was a
Scouting logic. Yeah.
yeah. So anyways, thanks for flashing that up there, Ryan. Made my night.
Yeah. I thought it might. I was like, what can I do here to piss Jeff off? Oh, I got it. No,
Yeah.
It was one of those ones, like I said, a total head scratcher for me. I mean, there's always one or two of those trades that come around every other year, and you're like, but why? But that one was always one of those ones that just stood out to me as a team giving up a lot for a player who's undoubtedly worth it. Like you said, if you're one piece away or two pieces away from winning, if you're that good, and I just didn't feel like Arizona was even
Not even close.
remotely close to that.
No.
No. But again, you know, that comes with experience. Like you have to have won before to understand it, even if it's junior or wherever. I mean, I spent 30 years in Peterborough, but we won 4 OHL championships, you know, so again, you get a feel for winning. You start to understand what works, what doesn't. You understand the importance of patience because you've been through it. So, you know, having won, that's really important. Like you have to have won in your past to understand it, because if you're at the NHL level with no history ever of winning anywhere, you're in tough.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but the only thing I've ever won, I want a slice of pizza on the radio once. But even I looked at that trade and I'm like, how is this going to help this team? Like, I mean, and again, I'm no great hockey mind. I love the sport. I worship it. I'm reading and watching, and I'm doing everything that a diehard would do. But like, I mean, I got no real experience in the sport, and a lot of people have the same mentality. Looked at that trade and they're like,
yeah.
You know, it's a bit of a sideways look. So,
and then you look at Tampa, right? Julian Brisebois, the GM there, he picks up David Savard. No one really talks about that, but you know, again, when you understand how hard the playoffs are, and you're playing every other night, the importance of size, competitiveness, and you just kind of quietly add David Savard, you're looking at going, man, that's and the difference obviously with Tampa, they could play 6 guys, three sets, right? They could just play them, and they're all big. They could all skate. They could all play. And Savard was, to me, just an under the radar great addition.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
I was hoping the Leafs were. I was hoping to see him in Leafs uniform this playoffs, but what do you do?
Dreamy dreamers, Leafs fans are like, oh, in the perfect world, Carl Lewis will trade absolutely nobody and get Nick Foligno and David Savard.
Yeah,
you know, but I mean, it's just not possible. And I mean, Jarmo Kekalainen had an absolute field day on draft day. I mean, he came out of it as good as any general manager can. 2 first-round draft picks.
Yeah, he could get Foligno back now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, he may stay in Toronto, who knows? But I mean, he's going to get more money in Columbus, so I could see him going back.
His family's in Columbus. They're of the age where they're not wanting to leave their friends. He's got a young family. It's not like kids, not like babies. You know, he's got
look at Mark Bergevin again. He just kind of quietly adds Corey Perry and Eric Stahl. Like both guys have won Stanley Cups, right?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, they've won everywhere they've gone. Corey Perry, he's from Peterborough. I mean, he won in Bantam. You know,
that's right.
That's, you know, like he's a competitive, driven guy, and Bergevin just kind of adds those guys. Nobody else, it seemed, wanted Corey Perry.
Yeah.
He knew the value of it. You know, he knew the value of Eric Stahl as a depth guy. So,
well, you know, these guys know what it took to win. And that's one of the biggest things in the league, that, you know, most of these guys don't know actually what it takes to win. And if you get a couple of those guys, they can help you.
Chicago, right? Like, you know, winning Stanley Cup there. So anyways, I you know, obviously I'm a Montreal fan, but I'm a Mark Bergevin fan. I love the way he does business, you know, and Julian Brisebois in Tampa, that guy's brilliant.
But the Sergachev and Drouin thing, and I mean, long before Drouin had to duck out this year, but I always said you traded a blue chip defenseman for a winger.
Yeah.
Drouin's a fantastic player, but I was like, but this is a defenseman, a big, talented defenseman for a winger. I thought that was a bit rough.
But I think what kind of drove it was the fact that Drouin was French Canadian too, which carries a lot of weight in Montreal. Yeah, and it should. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you can get a French Canadian player that's and he's a good player, he'll come out of this, I think. But that made him even more desirable. I don't think Marc Bergevin. I think he knew what he was giving up in Sergachev. Because he played in Windsor. I mean, he's a really good player. So
just super talented.
You can understand the logic to a certain extent.
That's right. Yeah, I saw it. It's just for me, Sergachev would have to be at least a center, and that was always the thing that the Leafs were missing was the big center like Matthews, and I thought that's what the Habs were always missing, and I was always terrified they were going to get Eric Stahl back when he went to Minnesota. If he had to leave Carolina and go to the Habs, I was literally I was going to lose sleep until he was traded to Minnesota. Yeah. And then that happened. Now I got to wait for Carey Price to not go to Colorado. And that's my other little, I know, right? Man. It haunts me, man. It haunts me. And I don't know. For some reason, I always feel that. Maybe it's the Patty Waugh thing from years ago. Sakic happened to be on that team. He knows how it went.
Hey, I'll tell you one, though, when you think about Montreal, too, talking about number one centers, how good a trade was the Suzuki trade?
Oh, yeah. I groaned when I saw Suzuki come back. I groaned. I was like, not Suzuki.
I got to say, I watched him in junior and I liked him, but he's way better than I thought.
He's so good.
It's all easy for us to talk about, I was right about this guy, I was right about this guy. And I wasn't totally wrong on him, but I did not project him to be as good as he is.
That was a question I was going to have. Was there anybody that you were wrong about?
Oh,
that's always something I'm going to ask a scout because scouting's fascinating. I'm at the rink with my two kids all the time, and I'm just looking like, what do you see in these kids young? I want to know.
You can't have done this for any extended period of time and not made mistakes.
Oh, absolutely, but that's the better ones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and sometimes though it's hard at the NHL level. You can sometimes look at it and say, well, that was a mistake, but maybe the fit was a mistake. Maybe the team's ability to develop wasn't, maybe players went to other teams after that had it was an easier fit or so. Sometimes there's reasons, I mean, you look at a guy in Arizona, we took Barrett Hayden 5th overall. He's finished the year, spent most of the year in the American League this year. But I've known Barrett since he was a young kid. He's from Peterborough. His dad played for me. And I told them right in my mind he should never, play as a 19-year-old, and they felt for whatever reason he had nothing left to do in junior to accomplish. And it's a process again, Barrett needed to play another World Juniors, and they rushed the process. And a lot of times when you watch the history, guys that get rushed, they get injured and it stalls them. They just can't get going. And whereas if you just step back and just let them grow at their own pace, it's much better. So whether we were wrong or right on Barrett Hayden remains to be seen, but I think the whole process was rushed unnecessarily there. So we'll see.
Well, I was actually thinking, was there somebody you didn't think was very good that ended up being very, very good? Is there anyone that you saw that might have been a bad night? If you had left Bonavista, the one night you saw Daniel Ryder.
I'll tell you one.
Right, it could have been
Logan Couture.
Oh, go.
In San Jose, we played them all the time. He was in Ottawa. I was with the Petes, and so I watched him a lot. And I, again, I respected him. I thought he was a solid player. I actually had him on a couple of all-star teams that I was the general manager for. And when San Jose traded up to get him, I remember thinking, I don't think they needed to do that.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people saying that. They're like, why?
Yeah.
Doug Wilson relied on Brian Kilray, who coached him in Ottawa, and Brian told him, this guy's he's high-end center. And I did not think that he would be as good as he's turned out to be. So again, if you're going to be in this business, you got to expect to be wrong once in a while.
Oh, absolutely.
You just hope you're right more than you're wrong.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the thing. You're not at the rink every night watching that like the coaches. It could be 2 nights you could have been sore for could have been nursing something you didn't know about.
Or again, it's just a great fit.
Yep.
It's a perfect fit, and they're not all perfect. So
no.
So yeah, no, I could come up with some more, but let's move on.
Like my grandfather used to say, there's a very thin line between hero and asshole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I envision scouting. I'm like, oh shit.
No, it's true. Like it's
Oh.
true. Like it's not rocket science, and you have to know what you like, and you have to have the strength of your convictions, that and then you have to, when you're wrong, you say, hey, I was wrong on that guy, and one of my best friends is Mark Hunter, and he's a really funny guy too, but he owns the London Knights, and
Yeah.
so he'll bug me about anybody I was wrong on, and expect me to fight back, and I just look at him, I go, yeah, I was wrong. What do you want me to say? I'm wrong on that guy. He doesn't know what to say. So
No.
that ends the argument.
Yeah.
No, and like scouting's always been fascinating. I was down watching the Ice Caps play when they were before they moved to Winnipeg, and the Marlies are in town. I'm always going to go see the Marlies, and I remember watching Dubas and company up in the private boxes, and just with the pieces of paper and heads down. I'm like, who are you looking at? What are you doing? Like, I'm fascinated. Who are, like, I'd like to see those pieces of paper.
Yeah, and a lot of times, what it is too, Chad, like experience does count, because you've made your mistakes. Like I made them in junior. I started in tier 2. I mean, you make them in tier 2, you make them in junior, you learn from them. And then hopefully the higher up you go, it limits the mistakes you're going to make, but you're still going to make them, because it's not an exact science. I don't care if it's analytical based or eye test based, there's still room for error. And so that's what makes it interesting.
That's right.
It's a game played on ice. Things are going to happen.
It's a different talent that you need that's not just taught in a book.
But if you're afraid to make decisions, or if you're sitting there afraid about being wrong, then you shouldn't do it.
No, absolutely not.
Because you're not valuable to a team. I mean, if you don't have that, strength, I believe in this guy, and I'll put my ass on the line. If you're not ready, if you're going to sit on the fence, you might as well give it up.
That's right. Yeah. No, you need the confidence to make that decision in your abilities. And I agree, but it's always one of those things. Like, I wonder, is anybody looking back and be like, damn it, I was wrong about that?
No, you're always looking back. You're always looking back.
Yeah. And that's, I always wonder that, because that's such a pressure place. And it's such a cool place.
Let's give Jeff an opportunity to be wrong again. All right. So we got a draft coming up, Jeff. Who you got? Someone that's not necessarily top 3, top 4 material. Who's the guy that stands out to you currently? Because I mean, this is the most draftiest draft of ever drafts. I mean, it's
a hard one.
No one's going to hold it against you if you're wrong, because everyone's going to be wrong this year.
Well, the one that's interesting, and I don't have a lot of knowledge of these players. The one player that I have a fair bit of knowledge about is Mason Mctavish, who plays here in town. And actually his dad played for us with the Petes as well. And I don't think Mason is projected to go in the top 3 or 4, but certainly somewhere in the top 15, I would think. But
he's there.
Really high end scorer, and plays hard. He's physically very strong. He's a guy that when the season was canceled, went to Switzerland to play, to keep his game going. There's a player in Barrie that I saw a lot, Brant Clark. I think he's going to go pretty high. He's a right defenseman that really smart with the puck, offensive minded. He actually went to Slovenia or Slovakia, I think it was, somewhere like that, to play. So you got to give these kids credit. On a lost season, a lot of these high-end prospects, they went over to a whole new world for them to play. And but Mason Mctavish is going to be really interesting to me, because guys like him are hard to find. I just don't know where he fits, because normally I have a good feel for the draft. I don't know a lot of the prospects for the first time this year, but I do know him.
Oh, it's gonna be a wild draft. It's gonna be one of those years where you're pulling Datsyuks out of the 7th round. Like, it's gonna be there's haven't the sample size for anyone is simply not there.
It's not Ontario. Ontario's the unknown, because
I should say that. I should have specified Ontario.
Yeah, the Quebec League had somewhat of a schedule. The Western League had somewhat of a schedule. So Ontario, there's some hidden gems there that some teams are going to hit home runs, and some teams are going to strike out on some guys. So the Ontario kids are going to be real interesting. And I know some teams have stepped back and said, we're not touching anybody from Ontario because they didn't play. So that's good. The Ontario kids are really going to be interesting.
I don't know. If you're not going to gamble, are you really in the game?
Right? But listen, it didn't. Shane Wright never played in almost 400 days.
Yeah.
And he came out and absolutely ripped it up.
Yeah.
But
I mean, these teams too, though, like if you're doing it right, you've got a bit of a book on the kids a year in advance, so they would have somewhat of a book, and they've all got video from a lot of these kids that didn't play, from the previous year they can watch. So, but Ontario is the most unknown for sure.
Yeah, and like trying to keep all these kids in shape.
Yeah, mentally and physically, because your junior career goes by so fast, and your draft year is such a special year for these kids, and it was gone. And
It's too
so you
bad.
feel for the kids for sure. That was a really tough year.
I got another player I wanted to ask you about. Good young kid, probably got a bright future. You're probably familiar with him, Steve Yzerman. I think you're probably familiar with him. He's a very good player.
You know what, Ryan? My first draft with the Petes, the very first time I sat at the table, we drafted Steve first, and that was our first round pick. Now, I was just I was like 20 years old. We didn't draft him because of me. But I sat at the table. I still to this day remember Steve coming down, had the long hair, little kind of a kid, and so he was only here 2 years, but you knew he was a guy that the process was accelerated.
Yeah.
He came, I don't know where we picked him. He was in the first round. I was like fourth or something like that, but he had led the Tier 2 league in Ottawa, I believe, in scoring that year prior to being drafted by the Petes. And the guy that would have had a lot of say in that was Jacques Martin, who's a longtime NHL coach. He was our scout in Ottawa at the time. So Jacques would have seen a lot of Steve. So I always tell people, well, that was my first draft, but we didn't draft Steve Yzerman because of me.
Listen, if I was you, that's what I would say. I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
They wanted to take some.
Well, and when you look back, it's still I forget, it was Brian Bradley went ahead of him. I think he went maybe third. So there might be two guys that went ahead of him. Brian Bradley was one. I forget who the other one was, but it's incredible that Steve didn't go first overall, and thankfully he didn't, because he ended up here.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I was looking back through, of course, because having you on the show, I mean, my memory of who was Pete, I was like, God, because my recent memories of Pete's, I mean, I've been following the Pete's wholeheartedly since they drafted both Robertson and Seymour Diargachev. I think both players, the ceiling on both those players is whatever they decide to make it. But I was digging back through, and I was like, my God, the Petes have had such great players over the years, but limited success, of course. I mean, it's like any franchise; you can't win on just one or two players. But you guys had 3 championships, their OHL championships, while you were there, and
Four. 89, 93, 96, 2000.
Yeah, okay, right.
It's right there.
Oh, there it is.
Tattoo. 4.
You better hope you're right.
I'll never forget.
Yeah, I hope you're right. If not, that's terrible.
I remember the championship. So now there's 4.
So that's my next question. Obviously, I'm curious what's your favorite memory? I mean, you have 4 championships. I mean, they're all special for their own reasons, I'm sure. But do you have a memory that sticks out as like, that was your crowning point as a general manager?
Maybe the 06 team, which was Jordan Stahl was on that team. Patrick Coletta played for Buffalo. Steve Downey played in the NHL, and there was others. But 2 years prior to that, we had missed the playoffs. So it was 2 or 3 years prior to that, and the heat in this town when you miss the playoffs is like it's not pleasant. And to watch that group grow, and that's where I really learned the process, because we stuck with a core with that team, and they grew as a group. And then we traded for Steve Downey that year, and because we had a tough year, we got Jordan Stahl with the 3rd overall pick, and we built it. And then it's small market versus big market. We beat the London Knights 4 straight in the finals, and that wasn't supposed to happen, because everybody thought the small markets couldn't win. So to prove that they could, and I think it was almost 10 years after that, nobody from the East won. The teams were always in the Western part of the OHL. So we were the only team in about a 10-year span. But what's funny was we won in 06, and in 1996 we won. We hosted the Memorial Cup, and we lost in the Memorial Cup final to Granby. So in a span of 10 years, we had 2 championships. And after we won in 06, we had a record season, 4 straight in the finals. And I'm downtown, after the game, getting something to eat with my wife and friends of ours, and some guy screaming at me, like, that was a long effing 10 years between championships, Twohey, and he's giving it to me. I'm like, well, some teams in the OHL have never won a championship. Secondly, I think we were the only team in that 10-year span that won it twice. And
Yeah.
this he's ripping me. So
I was actually gonna ask you about good chirps, because like I said, everyone seems to have a chirp that they remember sticks out to them at a certain time.
There you go.
That's awesome.
fans can be cruel here for sure. But 06, I just think because it was a team that was built. The 96 team, same thing. We built it over, through some hard times to build it with a core. And the 96 team was interesting because we made one trade. We added a guy, Eric Landry, right at the start of the year, and we made no moves the rest of the year. And we were OHL champions, beat Guelph in 7 games. That 7-game series in the finals, nobody could win a home game. So thankfully, Game 7 was in Guelph.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, Ryan, you can trust me on the 4 championships because I know how hard it is to win. So there's definitely 4.
I won pizza one time, Jeff. I know it all about it. Won a slice. I think it might have been a double slice too, like the big wedge. But
yeah, process. You got to be patient because you got to keep trying, right, till you get it.
Right. So it was 3 Fridays in a row. I called in 3 Fridays in a row and finally won. It was amazing.
But if you think you're only going to call once and win every time, it doesn't work that way. So
no, that's right.
I'm taking notes here, Jeff. I am. I'm taking notes. Going big or go home. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you about from your junior days, and it was your time. I mean, it's short-lived, but your time in Oshawa there. You had a team there your first year, and when I pulled up the roster, I was like, holy hell, that looks like a team that I wouldn't want to play against. Yeah. Just a bunch of guys, even the guys who weren't what I would call tough, still played a one of those, like a Scott Laughton type player. Just hard on the forecheck, just miserable to play against. But I mean, just a bunch of tough guys. Tyler Biggs, Scott Sabourin, who's made a name for himself in the AHL as a guy you just don't want to tangle with.
Yeah, Hunter Smith,
Boone Jenner again.
Boone Jenner was there. Yeah,
I love Boone Jenner. One of my favorite.
Tenacious.
Yeah. Boone. Well, another guy too, Josh Brown, plays for Ottawa Senators. Real tough. Big, real tough. But yeah, I mean, Boone Jenner, probably the hardest worker I've ever seen, day in, day out. Just work, play hurt, never complain. Scott Laughton wouldn't fight too often, but mean player. But it's interesting because Oshawa is a working class town. General Motors factory town. They appreciate hard work. They appreciate toughness, and they love that team. And DJ Smith was a hard-nosed player when he played, so everything fit perfectly.
Yeah.
And the one thing I said to the ownership when they hired me, I said, listen, wins and losses, that's tough to predict. But the one thing I will guarantee you is that no team of mine will ever be soft. And, so thankfully that team backed me up. But yeah, though that team, and the next year we added some more guys as well. A guy, Justice Dundas, John McGuire, just those were really tough kids. So that type of hockey is respected in Oshawa. I mean, not stupidity, but hard competitive hockey. Oshawa loves it. Well, I mean, most cities do, but Oshawa in particular.
Yeah, everyone's got a soft spot for the guy who puts on his work boots and comes to work every day. And
to grind it out every night, right?
Yeah, it's I
appreciate that.
He's a great story. He was never drafted. And
was that story? I missed it.
Scott Sabourin.
Sabourin, yeah, fantastic story.
Not because of me. He was there when I got there, but I don't think Scott knew kind of how to be good, and we changed the culture really quick there. And he got a rude awakening and changed dramatically. And, the rest is history. He did it on his own, but he had to learn. And he got his ass kicked a little bit early in his that year. But by the end, he's still one of my favorites. I still stay in touch with him the odd time, and he's done really well.
Yeah, no, I mean, he hasn't had a fair shake with the Leafs yet because they simply haven't needed him. But the little bit of time that we've got to see of Scott, man, does because he doesn't look out of place as a player either. Like, I mean, like, well, there is no place for goons anymore in the NHL. It simply doesn't exist. So when you got a guy who can handle himself like Scott can if he needs to, but still doesn't look out of place in your bottom six, man, I really enjoy him as a player. I watched him with the Marlies on a game that was televised last year. He had like 15 penalty minutes in the first 30 seconds of the game, and he was tossed out. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Run the goalie, drop the gloves.
He knows his role, right? And he embraces it, and he's not afraid of it. Still one of my favorite players from that team and the team after was Scott Laughton, though, playing in Philadelphia.
So good. Yeah.
You can see he's really found his game now. He's one of the top third line centers, maybe fourth, but probably third in the NHL. And you know, he had a chance to possibly test free agency a little bit, I think, and you know, wanted to stay. Probably took a little less, as we talked about, to stay in Philly, because he's a Philadelphia Flyer for sure. And Boone Jenner, like, those guys were really good friends too. But Scott has a meanness to him. He's a guy you want to go into a playoff game with for sure.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, Boone likes to walk that line too. I mean, even in World Juniors, he got tossed out, he got suspended. Like, he's just always on that line.
And he can play the wing. He can play center. I mean, he's mostly playing the wing, I think, in Columbus, but he can play center too. He kills penalties, blocks shots. Like,
That's right.
Unheralded, but very valuable.
One kid we didn't mention from that team, which I feel remiss if we didn't, is Lucas Lessio as well. Didn't quite fit the total mold of the rest of the characters on that team, but what a talented young fella. I mean,
we drafted Lucas in Arizona in the second round, and his second season with us in Oshawa, he had a very serious hand injury, skate, and it was an amazing story, because I forget who we were playing, but first shift, Lucas went down and a guy sliced his hand, and major surgery. And I'm like, man, that's about as serious an injury as I've ever seen. Later in that same game, Hunter Smith, who's a big right winger, was a second round pick to Calgary Flames, got hit. He went down and his glove kind of opened up. Guy stepped on his hand, cut his hand. So in one game, we had two guys long-term serious hand injuries. So I think that injury kind of impacted Lucas a little bit. Arizona might not have been a great fit for him as well, but I think, you know, for pure talent, he was a horse too, big, strong, could really skate. Had to learn the game a little bit, but you know, he's still playing. I think he's in the KHL now. So
yeah, no, I was surprised he didn't stick around, to be honest. I really was, because he was one of those guys. So I kind of had earmarked as a guy to watch. You know, shifty, could go on the puck, aggressive. I just liked his game. I really enjoyed his game. So no, great players in that team who really stuck out to me as the kind of guys that I enjoy to watch. So.
Yeah, well, if you ever get a chance to go to Oshawa, Ryan or Chad, it's a great building. It's a great building to watch a game in, and the facilities there are unbelievable. Like, it's NHL caliber locker room. You know,
no way.
Video. It's probably better than what we had in Arizona when I was there. And that's not a slight on Arizona, but that's how good Oshawa.
Oh, no way.
Passionate. The building's right downtown. It's a good spot.
Well, me and Chad are planning our trip to Ontario at some point to do a hockey dudes trip, and we're gonna look all you guys up when we get there. I'm gonna bring the free pizza.
But if I can help you, I'm happy to do it, because there's some really good places to watch games. You know,
I would love to. I love watching modern
Peterborough for sure. I mean, it's a unique building. I've never seen another building designed like Peterborough. It was built in 1956, so it's old, and
it's a barn, yeah. Sure.
And they've got all the history. Every team, you know, that ever was in Peterborough, all the team pictures. So you can watch me age over 30 years there. Getting older. But you can see guys like Steve Yzerman or Chris Pronger, for instance, when they came at a young age. The history there is fun. You'd love it if you ever got to a game in Peterborough. I can look after you here for sure.
Well,
oh yeah,
we're gonna hold you up on that, and same when you come this way. We got no hockey to show you, but we got lots of wrong.
You guys know what I think of Newfoundland. It's a great place.
Yeah.
You
can watch me follow my ass trying to coach some 7-year-olds.
Yeah. Hey, you know, just if you want one other story, you guys, I don't know if you remember with the St. John Maple Leafs, Shawn Thornton.
Oh yeah.
Remember he played here, and you know, Thornton, same thing. Was just I took a chance on a guy, drafted him in the 9th round, I think, because I'd seen him at a tournament in Quebec. He'd been through 2 drafts. Nobody wanted him. And he couldn't even make a junior B team in Oshawa, and came in and made our 96 championship team and was a vital part of it. And played a long time on the Rock there for the Leafs.
Yeah, he did it.
Yeah, a long career, 2 Stanley Cups. That's a really, really proud of him, because
another tough player.
Yeah. And
played the game right.
They look at you as a general manager like, oh, what a great pick. You know, you're smart. I'm like, geez, if I knew he was that good, I would have taken him a lot earlier. I just took
Yeah, that's the funniest. That's the funniest thing about people say, "Oh, what great scouting Detroit has." I'm like, if Detroit has such great scouting, they took those guys a lot earlier.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, so but Thordy will be still, I'm sure, remembered by fans of Newfoundland because he spent a lot of time in the community there. He played there for a long time and went on obviously to huge success in the NHL.
I remember one of my first games as a fan. I mean, I was only a little kid at the time, of course, when Thornton would have played here. Young enough that my dad took me to the game. Yeah. And I remember there was this big, bolsterous, the man was like at least twice the size of my dad. My dad was a big man at the time. He was standing behind us at Memorial Stadium in St. John's. And he just kept saying, "Give him the body, Shawn! Give him the body!" I never heard a thing the entire game. It was literally 60 minutes of this guy shouting, "Give him the body," right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chad, you got anything else for Jeff before we let him go? Because we're into overtime already. I don't want to keep the man all night.
He got all mine.
That and then some.
I had to torch him with the mistakes, but I mean,
that
was always one thing I had to wonder.
I didn't duck it.
No, he didn't duck it. No,
Bob and weaved on the Taylor Hall thing a little bit, but that's okay.
I'll tell you how I felt about that one. That trade never should have happened. But anyways,
yeah, we digress.
Yeah,
well, Jeff. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, thanks so much for coming on. Talking hockey with a hockey guy is what we strive to do here.
And different angles. It's fantastic.
No, listen, guys, I appreciate it. Obviously I'm a little long-winded, but I love talking hockey and reliving stories. And for you guys to give me a chance to do it, I appreciate that. So anytime, seriously, if you ever want me on, let me know, because it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, awesome. We really appreciate it too. We've always kicked around the idea of trying to connect with someone in scouting, or we had Tim Cherry on actually for an episode a while back. Now that's a different kind of scouting. He's scouting for but it's still scouting, but his approach to his scouting would be different than a team scout. So again, we really enjoy that particular viewpoint. And we're really grateful to have you on. So, like I said, as these scouting things come back up, we're gonna be back in touch, and we're gonna get together again for a powwow.
Happy to do it. I can share more stories with you anytime you want, guys. So I appreciate
Excellent.
it. And Ryan, I want to see those pictures when you're out in the ocean. So I want to see that. I sincerely do. So if you don't forget, send that to me. And listen, open invitation. I know you've got a lot of guests, but if you ever need somebody, I'd happily come on again and share some more stories with you.
Oh well,
really appreciate that.
Maybe
I'll hold you to it.
Maybe we need another host someday. We can put you on the zero payroll that we got.
No, I appreciate it. So this was fun, guys. I really appreciate it. I sincerely do. So thank you, and look forward to staying in touch. And if you're ever coming through Ontario, for sure, and I want to see those pictures.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, say hello to everybody in Newfoundland.
Will do.
Will do, man.
All right, all the best.
Have a great evening.
Bye now.
See you later. Well, there you have it. Here's our post-game reaction to the Jeff Twohey episode.
The view from the Pro Scout.
Holy hell, that was some good stuff. What a great guy. First and foremost, I know our listeners are going to be tired of hearing this, because after every guest I say, wow,
that's so good.
What a great guy. But let me tell you something about our guests, guys. If they weren't great guys, they wouldn't agree to come on here anyway. Me and Chad are a couple of newbie podcasters, newfies, if that. So the fact that these guys are willing to come on and share their experiences and their stories with us speaks volumes about the kind of people they are anyway. So we're really grateful Jeff took the time. We certainly will be back in touch with him, and will be back on the Deke Snipe Silly podcast, because his perspective and his connections in and around the league are far too valuable not to tap into, at least as often as he'll agree to come on. So
he promises there's lots of stories yet to come.
Oh yeah, no, the little conversations I had with him leading up to this podcast, I was like, oh man, I should be recording like now, right this second now. Such a great guy, and a unique perspective on the game. You don't get to spend 40 years in hockey without being a quality individual to begin with. Hockey doesn't have any people who aren't. You got to be a quality individual, and you had a prime example of one just now. So if you like what you've seen, give it a share, give it a like, tell all your friends, as Steve Dangle would say. But no, give it a share, give it a like. We appreciate any of that feedback we get online. Drop a comment in the comment box, because we love interacting with the people who are watching the show as well. But primarily, you can pick us up, of course, our video podcast on our website, www.deaksnipeselly.ca. You can also catch us on Facebook. All of our content, articles, memes, everything that Deke Snipe Silly's got going on is on our Facebook page. We've got a few viral memes going on there lately, which is a bit of fun. But yeah, we're on Facebook.com/DekeSnipeSilly. You can also catch us on Twitter. We're terrible at that, but we're working on it. At SillyDeke on Twitter. But of course, like I mentioned to Jeff, our audio podcast is on the climb all the time. You can catch us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, all of the above, basically. Just Google Deke Snipe Silly. So if you got nothing else, Chad, man, it's late in the night for me. I'm ready to hit the hay.
I'm training a 10-week-old puppy, so yeah, I could be up. I could be ready to do this all night, or I could be asleep on the couch in about 10 minutes. So
there you go. All right, guys, you're gonna see it there now. Hit that subscribe button right there. Boom.
There.
All right, guys. Peace out.
Cheers.